What if I told you that your home, probably your single biggest asset, could be stolen right out from under you and you wouldn't even know it happened? Sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, for a group of elderly homeowners in Los Angeles, this was their reality. Today, we're going to dig into how this heist went down, who was behind it, and most importantly, what you can do to make sure this never happens to you.
So let's start with the big number at the heart of all this, $17.4 million. That's how much this criminal ring was trying to steal. Now, they only got away with about $6 million before they were caught, but that massive number, it just shows you how big their ambition was and how vulnerable our most valuable assets can actually be.
And look, this wasn't some crime against faceless banks. This statement from the FBI's assistant director in LA really nails it. This was a targeted attack on elderly people, folks who spent their entire lives building up equity and a sense of security, only to have it all threatened by this complex web of lies and fake documents.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll dissect the scam itself. Then, we'll introduce you to the masterminds behind it. We'll cover how law enforcement finally took them down, talk about why this is a growing threat for everyone, and we'll wrap up with some real, concrete steps you can take to protect your own property.
So how in the world did they actually pull this off? Well, this wasn't some simple smash-and-grab job. No, this was a calculated, multi-step operation. Let's deconstruct their master plan. Their whole playbook was just incredibly detailed. First, they'd get their hands on the personal info of elderly homeowners who had paid off their houses. Then came the forgeries. And we're talking a wild amount of fake documents, driver's licenses, power of attorney forms, you name it. With those fakes, they'd impersonate the real owners to get millions in loans against the properties. And the final step? They'd launder all that stolen cash through a maze of shell companies. And to make that money trail just vanish, the criminals leaned heavily on something called synthetic identities. This is a really nasty type of fraud where they create a totally new fake person. They'll take a real, stolen social security number and mix it with made-up details. These ghost identities were then used to open bank accounts that were pretty much impossible to trace back to the real bad guys. All right, so who were the people behind this whole thing? It wasn't just one person. It took a whole crew, each with their own special job in the scheme. At the very top, you had the alleged co-leaders, Nazaret, Nico Shakrian, and Arnold Julian Moradians. They were the ones getting the victim data and sending in the fake loan applications. And backing them up were specialists like Avidus Chef Avo Hakimian, who allegedly made fake emails to impersonate the victims, and Ross Tarkan, who was the go-to guy for creating those synthetic identities to launder the money. This wasn't just a random group. This was a structured criminal business. But no matter how slick you think your plan is, you always leave a trail. So now, let's talk about how the whole thing came crashing down.
And check out this timeline. It really shows you just how patient law enforcement had to be. This scheme was running for over 2 years while investigators were carefully putting their case together. It all came to a head on March 19th when a 15-count federal indictment was unsealed and coordinated raids led to the arrest of 11 people. FBI agents even swarmed a Hollywood mansion to get one of the co-leaders.
And make no mistake, taking these guys down was a massive operation. It was the work of the Eurasian Organized Crime Task Force. That's a powerhouse team that brings together federal agencies like the FBI and the IRS with local law enforcement. When you see that level of teamwork, you know just how seriously the authorities are taking this kind of crime. And the reason for that huge, multi-agency response is pretty simple. This isn't just some crazy, isolated Hollywood story. It's a flashing red warning light for homeowners absolutely everywhere.
According to law enforcement, title fraud is on the rise all across the country. Criminals are using these tactics more and more to basically turn people's homes into their own personal ATMs.
And as this IRS special agent makes really clear, these criminals are experts at hiding money. But this quote also sends a powerful message right back at them. Law enforcement is dead set on tearing down the entire financial pipeline that makes these crimes worth doing in the first place, no matter how tangled it gets. So, this brings us to what is probably the most important part of this whole explainer. What can you do? How can you make sure that your property, your family's biggest investment, is safe and secure? It's a scary question to ask yourself, isn't it? But being proactive is your absolute best defense. Like they say, forewarned is forearmed. So let's walk through some expert advice on what to do if you're targeted and how to stop it from happening in the first place.
Now, for the most reliable info, we're not just guessing here, we're going straight to the experts over at the National Center for Victims of Crime. They've put together a really detailed checklist for anyone who's been a victim or is worried they could be.
Okay, so if the worst actually happens, the #1 rule is to act fast. Report it immediately to your local police and to federal agencies like the FBI. Start a special fraud file to keep track of absolutely everything. And this is crucial. You have to treat it like identity theft, which means contacting the 3 big credit bureaus and putting fraud alerts on your accounts. Finally, you should look into your civil options for trying to get your assets back.
But of course, prevention is always the best move. Never, ever sign a blank document. I don't care who asks you to. Push back on any high-pressure sales tactics. If someone is rushing you with a limited-time offer on a real estate deal, that's a huge red flag. You know the old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. And always, always double-check the license of any mortgage professional you're thinking about working with. A few minutes of homework can save you years of pain.
And that really leaves us with one final, crucial question to think about. Is your property's title secure? This whole Hollywood heist is a really sobering wake-up call that title fraud is real, it's growing, and it often targets the most vulnerable among us. Taking a few simple preventative steps today is one of the most important things you can do to protect your financial future.